Hello everybody, Michael the Librarian of Magic here, finding and cataloging the magical and pointing you to it. Back to catalog another episode of the Clone Wars. Here to give a recap and my general impressions of the latest episode, which premiered on April 10th, 2020. It is entitled Together Again. It is episode 8 of the final season, season 7 of the Clone Wars. I'm going to jump straight in. Before I do, as always, fair warning for spoilers. This will be a full recap, so it's spoiler heavy, just so you know up top, in case you're stumbling on this video. And with that out of the way, I'm going to jump right into recapping the episode. So, this is sort of the end of a four-episode story arc, I think. And it sort of picks up where the last one left off. The Martez sisters and Ahsoka are still in a Pike prison cell because they tried to escape and ended up right back in there. They're arguing about how they're still arguing about how they got there. Rafa believes that if they had just gone through with their mission as they originally were planning on, that things would be fine. They'd be back home by now. Ahsoka points out that it's the mission that they went on in the first place that was the problem, and Trace actually sides with Ahsoka, and that makes Rafa very angry, saying, you know, where are you going to be when she's gone? I'm the one that's always here for you. She's not. We always, have stuck together, and now you're siding with her, and I don't understand. All that kind of stuff. And in order to sort of get them to stop arguing or whatever, Ahsoka says that she has a plan to try to figure out how to get them out of there, but it's going to work better if she doesn't say what it is, and they're just going to have to trust her. And of course, Rafa is not in the trusting mood right now, but Ahsoka just says, sorry, you're going to have to trust me, and Rafa's like, well, I guess what choice do I have? We're here in this cell, so let's see what you're talking about. And Pike guards come and show up and take him to Marg Krim's throne room. He's the Pike leader. And Krim tells them, basically your options are pay your debt that you owe us for the spice that you lost, or watch all of your friends die slowly. Basically, we're going to kill all of you in front of each other, and it's going to be painful. Ahsoka says, I want to make a deal with you. Just by myself, without them, which surprises them. This is part of her plan, but it's surprising to everybody in the room. She says, these two hid the spice somewhere, I don't know where, but my proposal is that you send Rafa and Trace to go retrieve the spice, give them one rotation to bring it back, and if they don't, in order to motivate them, if they don't, I know where their family is, and I'll tell you the location of their family, which will be a threat to them, so they'll make sure that they come back on time. And Krim says, what's in it for you? To Ahsoka. And Ahsoka says, I just want my percentage of the cut from the sale of the spice. That's all that's in it for me. Krim agrees, reminding the Martez sisters that he's going to torture and kill Ahsoka and then get the information he needs, find their family, and then torture and kill them if they don't make it back in one rotation. And Rafa feigns anger towards Ahsoka, says, I won't forget that you did this, that you made these, that you turned your back on us. Then Krim's, right-hand man, Fife, leans into Krim and says, this is clearly a deception. To which Krim says, I know it is, but what choice do I have? Things are going sideways here, and what pressure, the pressures that are on us. And Fife says, do you think that he'll find out that things are going wrong right now? Basically referencing some other outside pressure that we don't yet know about, but will be revealed later on in this episode. And Krim says he always knows. He'll always find out. So we basically learn in this little scene that there's some sort of pressure on the Pikes that we have yet to learn about so far. The theory that Ahsoka was floating to the Martez sisters in the previous episode is that the Pikes are just trying to save their reputation, and that's why they're trying to hunt them down repeatedly or try to win their spice back. They can't just let them go because then their reputation would be damaged. But we're finding out the truth here in this episode that they're actually receiving some sort of pressure from another player. And that's what this conversation is kind of hinting at. So the Martez sisters take off. And as they take off, we see that they're still being watched by those 3 Mandalorian women that were in the last episode. Ren and the other former Death Watch. Bo, Kryze, those people that were former Death Watchers, Mandalorians that are they're tracking Ahsoka, basically. That's why they're there. They see the ship take off, the Silver Angel, and Ursa Wren turns to Bo-Katan Kryze and says, I scanned the ship, didn't see the Jedi in there. Bo-Katan says, keep watch. There's 2 other Mandalorians there. Bo-Katan says, keep watch. Tell me when Ahsoka exits the Citadel. So they're kind of keeping watch on the situation as well. Then the Martez sisters stop at a refueling station on their way to wherever it is they're going to discuss what just happened. Trace wants to know why did Ahsoka say that she was going to give up the location of our family when she knows good and well we don't have a family, that they're dead and gone. And Rafa says, yeah, that's the entire point. I think that's part of her plan. She lied about that, and now we have to help save her, because if we don't, she's going to hold that over my head anyway. So Rafa is, wanting to go save her under those pretenses. Like, she'll hold it over my head if we don't, so let's go do that. But Rafa picked up that that was kind of part of the plan of trusting her, that that was part of it. So they fly down to a Pike loading facility where they're loading spice in and out of these docks. And the dock workers are this species called Toongs. They have this sort of like big, long face. They're almost all head, and they're short. And Rafa basically comes out of the Silver Angel with a bunch of bluster to try to buffalo these Toongs into getting spice off the dock. So she basically tells them this. She concocts this quick lie saying, hey, we're here to load up the spice that you have for us. And the guy says, look, I don't have anything on my docket saying that you're supposed to be picking up spice here. I don't know anything about it. And she says, there must be some sort of mistake. I'm supposed to get it up. This is a special request that's coming down from the higher-ups. And that might be why you don't have it on your call sheet or whatever. And he's like, well, I haven't heard of this. I need to talk to my manager. And she keeps coming at him. Well, go talk to your manager. In the meanwhile, I'm going to load this stuff up because you're going to find out that I'm right, and then I'm going to blame you for it instead of me. So she's intimidating him and giving him this really quick, blustery story. So he takes off to try to find a manager, and meanwhile, Rafa has the rest of the dock workers start loading up spice on the Silver Angel. He comes back and says, I went to find a manager. We know you're not supposed to be here. And she says, I don't see a manager around anywhere, so I'm just going to go ahead and take off. But actually, there is a manager standing right behind her. He's this big, tall Trandoshan. And they basically start a big fight. Rafa tries to go after the Trandoshan and start punching him and kicking him, and it's not really doing anything. He's much bigger than her, and he starts throwing her around. And there's this big, interesting fight sequence on this dock where the Martez sisters are basically getting worked by this Trandoshan guy. Eventually, towards the end of the skirmish, the Trandoshan lifts up Rafa to try to throw her off the dock, but he's standing on this, platform thingy that has a switch under it to give way, and as he's throwing Rafa off, she grabs this, ladder platform thingy above her, swings off it in time, and activates this switch that pulls the thing out from underneath the Trandoshan guy, and he falls to his death. And then after that happens, they're able to, the Martez sisters are able to hop in the Silver Angel and fly away with the spice. So they're able to secure some spice for the Pikes. Meanwhile, back on the prison, Ahsoka sneaks out of her cell using the Force, as she's been doing repeatedly. And she sneaks into the spice refinery that they have in there. And she finds an armory there and grabs a whole bunch of thermal detonators and places all these detonators all over these spice silos in the refinery because she figures, she says, quote, that she might as well do some good while she's here, so she's going to blow up this spice refinery while she's here. And right up above the silos, there's this platform where Marg Krim is standing, and she overhears him speaking to a hologram of Maul, the same Maul that is, formerly Darth Maul, and that's when we get revealed that Maul is the outside pressure on the Pikes, and that's what's been forcing their hand on trying to find these people repeatedly. So she hears this conversation, and Krim tells Maul, even though there's been a delay, we're ready to proceed as planned. We're ready to go. They're basically apologizing to Maul for the delays, and Maul tells them, "You're a small piece of the mechanism I've designed, but your failure is jeopardizing everything." And they come up with an excuse. Krim says, "Well, the Republic is cracking down on our operations, and they've just recently raided a shipment of ours on Coruscant." And Maul asks, "Were there Jedi involved?" And Krim says, "Well, none of my men returned." To which Maul replies, "Well, then the Jedi were definitely involved." Because if you've watched the show at all, his story arc since he's been back is that he's got a thing for revenge against the Jedi because Obi-Wan Kenobi cut him in half. And he survived that, but he wants to take out his revenge on Obi-Wan and every other Jedi he can get his hands on. So he's says, "Yeah, were there Jedi? Yeah, there were definitely Jedi." Then Maul tells Krim, if there are any more delays, Crimson Dawn would love to take over operations of your refinery. Crimson Dawn is this crime syndicate that Maul has actually been running behind the scenes of all of this stuff. And they're also tied into the live action film Solo. If you've seen that, that's what's going on towards the end of that with Maul and Kira and all of that stuff. Crimson Dawn is heavily involved in the plot of that. So if you've seen that movie, that explains where some of that is coming from. So that's all tied in. Anyway, that's the threat that Maul makes. And he then senses Ahsoka even through the hologram, through the long distance, and she notices that he's looking to the side and sensing her, so she ducks just in time, and he can't really see that she's down below, hanging out in this refinery. So then, right on cue, the guards come in to tell Krim the prisoner has escaped, and at that point, they're scrambling around, and Ahsoka slips away and goes into the control room of this, refinery area to figure out where the transmissions from Maul were coming from. And she's able to discover that he's on Mandalore, which we already knew from past seasons. If you've been following the Clone Wars, Maul was, when he came back, he incited the Death Watch people to try to take over the pacifistic Mandalorian government led by Duchess Satine, and they tried a coup, and things didn't work out for them. That's how Death Watch got obliterated, and how these other Mandalorian people are now following Ahsoka around. And that's why they disbanded Death Watch, and that's why they're looking for them, because they're trying to get their revenge on Maul, because he basically tricked them all, and now he's controlling the planet on Mandalore with Crimson Dawn and everything like that. So that's kind of the very short gist of what's going on there. So the Pikes then show up in this room where Ahsoka is. When she finds out, she reads this transmission, and she has no other choice. She's backed into a corner. She starts using the Force to chuck them all around. But eventually she's overwhelmed by the number of Pikes, and Krim comes in, and when he sees her throwing people around, he realizes that she's a Jedi. So her she's a Jedi cover is blown, so to speak. And Krim says, "Are the other two also Jedi? Are they in on it with you?" And Ahsoka says, "No, they're not. They don't know anything about this." And Krim says, "In any instance, the Council will regret sending you here." And she was not sent by the Council. As we know, she's no longer a Jedi. She's not affiliated. But it'll be interesting to see where that connection comes back in, because she's basically, right now, in this first storyline, since she's left the Jedi, she's still going around the galaxy doing Jedi stuff. And when the Jedi get news of this, it'll be interesting to see how they react. So, she's throwing that stuff around. They capture her, basically. Krim has the upper hand on Ahsoka, so he captures her. and then says, hey, this is perfect timing to restore our reputation with Maul. We're just going to execute you. And when he finds out we've executed a Jedi, that's going to be great. And there's, speaking of perfect timing, Trace and Rafa show up with the spice and says, hey, we got your spice shipment. Krim says, I know that you're with her, with the Jedi. We know that you're affiliated doing all of this mission. And Trace and Rafa are genuinely surprised that Ahsoka's a Jedi. This is the first they're learning of it as well. It finally gets revealed to them. You're a Jedi? This is crazy. So it's a big reveal for them. They're shocked. And while they're arguing with each other, why didn't you tell us? And Ahsoka saying, I didn't know how. You told me the story about your parents dying and the Jedi were involved and it didn't seem right. And while they're having this whole argument and conversation, all of the detonators that Ahsoka planted explode, and the refinery starts going up in flames. And that gives the Martez sisters and Ahsoka the chance to escape out on the platform to the Silver Angel, get in their ship and go. They are followed by 3 Pike ships, and while they're arguing in the ship about the, reveal that Ahsoka's a Jedi, Trace says, well, if you're a Jedi, then you're probably a good shot. And Ahsoka says, I am. And she says, well, the least you can do is use your skills to shoot off these ships. And she does. She's able to shoot off the ships pretty easily. And as they're getting off planet, they're starting to fly back to Coruscant. Ahsoka's apologizing and getting a chance to explain herself, and then they're pursued off planet by the Mandalorian ship with, Bo-Katan and Bo-Katan Kryze and Ursa Wren and all the rest of the Mandalorians. The ending of the episode, they get themselves to Coruscant, and they land back at the Martez's garage, and they have themselves a little conversation. Ahsoka tells them, I doubt the Pikes will be looking for you, as they think that I was on a mission from the Jedi, so they'll probably not pursue you. They'll be looking for me. And Rafa says, you're going to arrest me for spice smuggling because you're a Jedi? And Ahsoka claps right back at her and says, I've been telling you I'm not a Jedi anymore. And they both have questions. How can that be? We didn't know you could leave the Order. Trace wants to know, how can you just walk away from the Jedi Order? We didn't think that's how it worked. And Ahsoka says, well, I was trained, but I'm not a Jedi, and it's complicated. And Rafa says, I don't really want to hear your complicated story, but I'll tell you that even though you don't think of yourself as a Jedi, you act like one, at least the way that I would want a Jedi to act. Because if you'll remember from the other episodes, Rafa's got, problems with the way the Jedi behave, but when she sees the way Ahsoka is, she thinks that's the way Jedi are supposed to be. So that's a real high compliment coming from Rafa to Ahsoka. So they're pretty much going to be leaving on decent terms here. Trace then tells Ahsoka, thanks. After all, we were in over our heads. You saved our lives. You got us out of this scrape. And I consider you a friend. So they're all kind of wrapping things up on good terms, making, a friendship with each other. At which point they're interrupted by Bo-Katan Kryze, who enters with two of the other Mandalorians. And Ahsoka right away tells the Martez sisters, back off, this is bad news. And Bo-Katan says, don't worry, Death Watch is gone. We're not here to straight attack you. And then she activates the hologram of Maul and tells Ahsoka, we have a common enemy, and we need your help to try to dispatch Maul. And you have 5 minutes to decide whether or not you want to go with us. We're going back to our ship. She turns back to talk to the Martez sisters, and Trace says, well, you should help them like you helped us. And Ahsoka says, I'm afraid of the path that it might lead down because it might lead me back to the Jedi. And Rafa says, that might be exactly where you're meant to be. You don't know yet. You have to go down the path to find out. And Ahsoka says, well, I'm going to leave my speeder bike here in your hangar just in case. And so she boards the Mando ship and leaves with them to presumably go track down Maul. That's where the story arc ends, possibly. At least that's where the involvement of the Martez sisters ends, and I'm assuming we might see more with Ahsoka and the Mandalorians going after Maul and Crimson Dawn and on the planet Mandalore and all that stuff, which would be really cool. So that kind of wraps this up. She ends on a friendly note with the Martez sisters, and that kind of wraps up a little bit. So my overall thoughts on the arc were that it was good. It was really entertaining. I liked the character development of it, and it was a nice little piece for Ahsoka. Is it the best Clone Wars story arc I've ever seen? No, it's definitely not. It's sort of middling, fair to middling, but I think it's really necessary. It wasn't that slow. It wasn't dull to watch, and it was a nice little character piece for Ahsoka. I think it was needed as her sort of first adventure after leaving the Jedi Order, and it was sort of necessary for her to bridge the gap before she jumps right into other action, because she's confused. She doesn't know who she is, and she needs to figure out a little bit more of who she is without the Jedi, and this story arc is really good for establishing some of that, of her process of figuring that out. So there are a lot of good things here, but it is a story. It is a character building arc, so it's not heavy on the action or plot, meta plot revelations or anything like that. But it does have enough in there to really be a solid and interesting arc. So overall, I enjoyed it. I'll be very interested to see where the show goes from here. I think there's only 4 episodes left in the season, which means there's only 4 episodes left of the series total, because this is the last season. So we'll see where they go from here. I'm assuming we're headed towards Mandalore and a confrontation with Maul, and that should be a really cool bang-up way to end the series and the season. It'll be interesting to see what happens, see if the Jedi get involved, or how they might react to Ahsoka. We may or may not see that. It'll be interesting to see how they tie things up. So that was the episode of the Clone Wars for the week. I hope this was entertaining, informative especially. If you have any questions about things, let me know. Thanks as always for watching these. Give me a thumbs up and comments and all that good stuff. Until they come out with a new episode this week, as I'm getting caught up on these things and making these review videos, take care of each other. May the Force be with you. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.